Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel. I have two videos I'm going to be recording here in succession, and they are linked. Not so much, they are about different topics, as you'll see, because I'll release one day and one the other. But they do kind of blend into each other, especially the second one, moving into the next. So you'll see what I mean. But I recommend you watch them both. The first one, as you see from the thumbnail, I'm referencing that infamous quote from The Last Jedi, in which Kylo Ren tells Rey, forget the past, kill it if you have to. And everyone who was just aghast at the atrocities that movie committed to the Star Wars story, characters, canon, themes, legacy, and everything, rightly pointed out that quote was very meta, right? It was very indicative. It was them showing their hand, Rian Johnson showing his hand, what he wanted to do, Kathleen Kennedy showing her hand, what she wanted to do with Star Wars. But it's really indicative of the larger movement of ideologues in our storytelling industry across different franchises, Star Wars, DC, Marvel, whatever. It's going to sound like I'm getting political here, but I'm not. I'm going to talk about progressivism because this is very linked into the ideology that these ideologues have who are working in our media and our storytelling industries. That's not to say that anybody who just happens to be a Democrat or hold liberal values or whatever is necessarily like this. Progressivism is a specific philosophy. Progressivism is the philosophy that if we keep working hard enough, if we keep doing it, if we keep progressing, we're eventually going to get to a point in which we'll reach a utopia. Guys, we'll actually finally make it. We'll finally make it. We'll have the kind of society, where everybody's fair and everything, this and that. And it's easy to see how alluring that kind of philosophy can be. And the young really fall prey to it quite often because they've yet to really think through all of the options about society, philosophies of society. They haven't seen a lot of the world usually and whatnot. So they typically fall prey to this. Of course, it's nonsense. It's nonsense, and there are a couple of problems with it, but, it has this idea that, humanity just striving together will eventually get there. We'll cross a threshold, and suddenly we'll have, nobody will want to commit a murder, nobody will, all this kind of stuff. People usually get older and realize, yeah, that's not going to work, especially if you're from a Judeo-Christian mindset, in which you realize that we live in a fallen world. Look around you. This world's pretty brutal. There's beauty in it, absolutely, and there are good things in it, and there are things that we should fight for and that we should hold the line for. But this world's never going to be, that kind of like an anarchy kind of, and that's not necessarily all progressives believe in anarchy, but that kind of mindset, they're part and parcel of the same kind of concept, is a very naive one. It's a very naive one. So why am I even bringing that up? Well, because part of progressivism is to believe that everything in the past is subpar. That was when you haven't progressed as far as you are today. Likewise, everything tomorrow will be better than it was today if you continue to work and you keep going. And that politically they think that, and they get checked every now and this, when how could a Donald Trump be elected? Oh, I thought we were far past this. I guess we're not. I guess we're, and they'll turn their anger out on people who, have shown them that they're not as progressed as they want to be and so forth. But it exists when you have that philosophy about the world, about politics or whatever, and you're an ideologue about that philosophy, meaning that's at your core identity. You've integrated that philosophy into your identity. That is everything you do. Going to get that potato chip to writing that new Star Wars movie needs to be in service of this ideology. Well, then that will carry through in your stories. So if all of the work, if the world yesterday was subpar, don't you dare say anything good about the 50s. Oh, you're just a racist. You might as well be practically Hitler. You said the 50s were nice. Yeah, there were a lot of wonderful things about the 50s. Were there horrible things? Sure. Any given era, any given time period has strengths and weaknesses. It's kind of the flip side of that is people who say, oh, things have just never been as bad as they are today. I mean, what is the world coming to? Like people living in the pandemic thing, going through that. Try living through the bubonic plague. I mean, there have been worse times. Each era has its good things and its bad things, and it doesn't mean you stop fighting for and trying to hold the line and try to progress. Even anybody can progress. We do need to make progress. Not being a progressivist doesn't mean you don't want to make progress in certain areas, but it means you have to realize that there were good things in the past and that we've probably regressed. In fact, we have regressed quite a bit in some areas. But if you think progressivism is it, and you're an ideologue and you're writing stories, then the stories and the characters of the past, they're a problem too. They just need to go. Forget the past, kill it if you have to. And that's what these ideologues are really trying to do. If you look, and it's something very new. If you look at any franchise, I talked in a previous video about how Superman, Batman, a lot of these characters, once they were, set, after the first year or two or whatever their creation, once they set into what the public needed them to be, they remained steady for decades until a change was mandated. And now you've got people today trying to, sell this lie. Well, characters always change, they're always, that was your Superman in your era that you like, but this is mine now, and this is my Batman. He kills people, and that's nonsense. That's a ridiculous lie. That is nonsense. Things have regressed a lot. Now, they don't like those characters. If they can, they'll try to erase those characters completely. Why don't we just get rid of Clark Kent altogether? Let's just bring his son in. Hey, his son can be bisexual, right? We can get away with so much more just creating new characters. They don't want to create their own stories from the ground up. They can't do that. And this plays into what I'm going to talk about in the next video. I'll get to that. But they can't fathom doing that because they're not that creative themselves. They don't have, they're embodied the trickster to the point where all they can do is point out problems with other things that they can't create themselves. So they need the Star Wars structure around them. But then they want to kill off characters. They want to say things like, well, we're done telling the Skywalker saga. Come on, Luke Skywalker, that story's done now. Let's tell some different stories. That's not the way it was in the past decades. Star Wars, first hit the scenes there in 78. Luke Skywalker, the characters of that movie, Han Solo and so forth, made such a great impact that in the 90s, when people were still clamoring for it, the EU continued those stories. Long before it told stories of the Old Republic or whatever, it continued the story of Luke. Even when it did go into like a legacy era, it was still Luke's influence, bearing upon that. Because the Luke Skywalker story is so... George Lucas studied and talked to Joseph Campbell and made sure it was inextricably linked to the hero's journey. It's why it resonates with people so much. But the progressivist storytellers, get away from that hero's journey. Oh, that's problematic. It's the patriarchy. It's white, heteronormative, cisgender, blah, 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 blah. No, it's human psychology. That's the way it works. Oh, who are you to say what human psychology? It's all constructed. What's a man? What's a woman? What's all blah, blah, blah. They want to tear everything down with the thought that they want to build it back up, but they don't know how to build back up, so they continue just making a mess of our current playgrounds. Get rid of all those classic Star Wars characters. Hey, isn't it time for something new anyway? And it's not a problem with new stories being told. The EU would always invent new characters or new eras and tell new things. That's fine, but you never did it to replace the old ones. You never closed the book, on this or that character or the influence they had on the franchise. We're seeing that across the board now. We've seen it with Star Wars. We've seen it with superheroes. We're seeing it all over the place. Shut out the old, kill the past. We need a fresh playing ground, our fresh ground so that we can push our own ideologies and our own agendas and tell new kinds of stories that aren't, that kind of... And what did they replace the hero's journey with? This garbage story where you're already amazing. You're already amazing. You don't have to change. No, just realize that you're amazing and that other people are holding you down. That's the feminist journey. Ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. It doesn't resonate. Mark my words. Certainly Captain Marvel, not even Frozen, is really going to resonate with people years down the road, like something like Cinderella still does. Speaking of Disney movies, for example. But we're seeing that. Now, what do we do about it? First of all, let me say that some of you, when I'm talking about Star Wars, are going to say, nuh-uh, Favreau and Filoni, they brought Luke back, and they had that wonderful scene, and it got my fifis all stirred up when he comes in with his lightsaber at the end of Mandalorian. And I've pointed out a number of times, and finally, it's just pretty much shown. I mean, people have come off of this nonsense about there's a civil war, Favreau and Filoni are chosen ones. They've come off of that now, for the most part. Only the more desperate people are still desperately holding on to that. But that was just a bone thrown to you. No, Dave Filoni, and he's going to be the topic of my next video, is only interested in one thing. He's not interested in saving Luke Skywalker or telling you Luke Skywalker stories. He's interested in pushing Ahsoka Tano, making her fundamentally linked to every thread of every Star Wars era, because Star Wars is her story, and that is what he's going to be trying to push time and time and again. You'll see it. You already see it now. What has he done to Luke? Well, he brought him in, this and that, whatever. But Ahsoka led to him, and then the next time he shows up, he's with Ahsoka, and he's her lapdog. That's the Filoni vision of that. He's a whole problem of a creator. We'll talk about him in a bit here, but in the next video. But what do we do about this? So what we need to do is cling to, celebrate, consciously and consistently celebrate the stories we have, our classic old stories. That's not to say that we don't need new stories. We do. We need independent creators. We need new stories. Hollywood, in a perfect world, would stop rehashing all of these old ones. Not because we don't want the old stories revisited. I mean, in a perfect universe where Hollywood could actually do a decent Star Wars or a decent, return to this or that franchise, that would be great, right? But they can't. But they're not going to write anything new either. So, new creators need to come up and write new works, sure. But we as consumers, connoisseurs of story, need to insist upon and continue and consistently celebrate the classic stories. We can't let them fade away. And how do they fade away? I mean, they fade away by the ideologues telling you forget those, don't worry about them, just come here and watch our new stuff. But they also fade away by people saying, oh no, I'm not forgetting that, I like that, but I need to watch some of the new stuff, because hey, what about the good stuff that does come out? What about a Maverick that gets released? How would I know Maverick was so good if I wasn't watching any of the new stuff? Stop fooling yourself. Okay, I'm not a Top Gun fan, so I didn't bother seeing Maverick, but apparently it's really great. Wonderful. If something like that actually slips through, fine. But you don't need to be going and celebrating and keeping your finger on the pulse of everything new and watching it all, so you don't miss a Maverick. If a Maverick comes out, it's going to be a big enough story, or even I, who don't worry about anything new, heard about it. If I was at all interested in Top Gun, I would go see that. But you're not going to miss anything. But people are so desperately afraid, like I said, they're consumers, and they can't not consume the new stuff. So they'll talk out of both sides of their mouth. Oh no, I love the old stuff. I'm not losing that. But I think it's still good to still watch. And no, you can't do both. You can't keep in touch with all of the new Twitter fads, all of the new things that your favorite YouTubers are saying about this and that, and follow this and that. You can't do that and put the same kind of energy in the classic, wonderful, old work that we have that needs to be celebrated, needs to be held on to, because the ideologues are going to try their best for you to forget it. They're trying to erase that past, kill it if they have to, and they will do it by force, and if they can't do it by force, they will be very insidious about it, throwing you a little bone, subtly changing the color of it a little bit. Well, hey, we gave you Luke. I mean, it's a little bit of a different Luke, hey, we gave you, those were some ideas from the EU. I mean, it's not really the EU, but we gave you some, isn't that good? Isn't that great what we did for you? And that's not their goal. Their goal is to continue pushing ahead with their progressivism, or progressivist philosophy of storytelling, which is not to build on anything of the past. Tear it all down. Do your own things. Now, not everybody who does this may or may not be a conscious or specifically labeled a progressivist, in their philosophy of storytelling, but that consequence of progressivist storytelling still holds sway, because we also see it in the nihilists today, who say, I don't care if Batman didn't kill for so many decades. It's just stupid. It's unrealistic. Come on. It's time now that you'd realize he'd have to kill. Because they can't conceive, as I said before, they don't want to conceive of a aspirational hero or aspirational story, world or whatever. They fall into more of this nihilistic tone. Or you have somebody like Dave Filoni, who I just don't know. He's got to be a progressivist at heart. I'm sure he's an ideologue at heart. But he's very slick. He's very slick. That's what my next video is going to be on. So I should probably stop talking here and go ahead and segue into that, because he is not. It just boggles my mind when people think he's some great chosen one. He's the hero giving us the good story or whatever. So that's for the other video. But anyway, I wanted to talk about that. It's important for us to hold fast to the tried and true works, to celebrate them, to keep talking about them, to keep posting about them, to keep them relevant in a culture that's actively trying to kill and forget it. That's the important message of this video. So that's all for this time. Thanks for watching. Until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love.